Barry Gibb finally speaks the truth at the age of 78. The truth about Andy Gibb. Barry Gibb was born Barry Allen Crompton Gibb on Douglas on September 1st, 1946, Isle of Man. He is one of the most famous musicians, singers, and songwriters in the history of modern music. Gibb exhibited an amazing talent for music. His relatives, who saw his innate talent, helped him get started with his performance with his brothers, Robin and Maurice, who would eventually create becoming one of the most famous in the world, the Bee Gees, a group. Their trip began by doing little shows in Australia in the 1950s. Despite their remarkable abilities quickly pushed them to fame all around the world. The Bee Gees got huge success in the late 1960s and 1970s, making room for as masters of harmony and the first people to make pop and disco music. Barry, with his famous high voice, became the leader of the music and creativity of the group, often taking on the role of key person who writes songs. He co-wrote and made a lot of hits, not just for the Bee Gees and other famous artists too. How Deep Is Your Love and Staying Alive are two songs that Your Love and Night Fever become timeless classics that set the tone for Night Fever era, and always linking Bee Gees and the cultural change of the disco scene. Not just disco, Barry Gibb's amazing ability to write songs went across several types of music. He wrote for and collaborated with artists like Barbara Kenny Rogers, Dolly Parton, and Strays and Diana Ross and Dionne Warwick, showcasing how flexible he is and talent to make hits in pop, adult contemporary, country, and R&B music. Few songwriters throughout history have matched his level of success. Barry has the honor of being one of the most productive composers ever, with more than 1,000 songs written and managed chart-topping tunes for decades. Being inducted into the Songwriters Hall of Fame with Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and Fame is proof of how long he will have an effect on the music world. Barry's professional life was full with wins, but his personal life was quite close to the joys and sad things that happened to families. The Bee Gees were not just a band, but brothers brought together by music and blood. His loss of Andy, Maurice, and Robin, his brothers, brought Barry was left with terrible pain, which made him the last Gibb brother still alive. In a lot of he has freely talked about the anguish of surviving longer than his siblings, but he has kept their memory alive by keeping their music alive for generations. His strength, grace, and dedicated to keeping the Bee Gees' memory alive make him a symbol of not giving up in the face of loss. Barry's effect is not just in his documents, but also in his power to move millions of people in the world. One of the things that made his voice so high was most famous in music history, and his stage presence displayed both kindness and confidence. Even after he kept doing it for decades in the business, act with enthusiasm, connecting with those who grew up listening to the Bee Gees and with younger fans finding their first time listening to music. His job durability and timeless art show it that really good music never goes away. Barry Gibb's personal life, like his career, has had a lot of big milestones, big changes, and very important connections. His first married Maureen Bates, a young woman he wed on August 22, 1966. At the age of 19, Gibb was at the Timiat in the beginning phases of making a name for himself as a musician artist, and he was trying to meet all of his career, which was growing quickly, with the difficulties of becoming a grown-up. But their marriage wasn't for long. Even though they first seemed determined to develop a union, had a hard time with their lives together. The weight of Gibb's rising stardom and the hard pressures of existence in the spotlight. In the end, the couple lived in a brief time together, and by July marriage was official in 1970. Finished. People often reflect back on the short marriage as a time for Gibb to learn personal journey, showing how hard it was for emerging stars to stay stable during the peak of pop culture in the 1960s. Not long after this first marriage ended, because of fate made Barry Gibb meet the woman who would become his true love life. While the BBC was recording Top of the Pops is a hugely popular music show, Gibb met Linda Gray at the Pops in London, who at the time had her own part of glamour and fame, the former Miss Edinburgh. Their meeting was Gibb called it a moment of real luck, and their love story grew fast. On the 1st of September, 1970, Barry's 24th birthday, by chance, Gibb and Linda Gray got married, starting what has become one of the longest-lasting marriages in the business of entertainment. Their union has been a key part of Gibb's personality, persisting through the ups and downs of fame, changes in the industry, and even the sad loss of his brothers. Barry and Linda built not just a marriage, and a big and family that is really tight. They are proud of. Stephen is the parent of 5 kids, Ashley, Travis, Michael, and Alex. Their oldest son, Stephen Gibb, followed in his father's footsteps by going for a career in music, becoming both a guitarist and a lyricist who even worked with rock and heavy metal bands, showing the wide range of musical styles inside the Gibb family. Barry is also a grandfather many times over with 7 grandkids who have brought more happiness into his life. Gibb has often talked about the grounding effect of his wife and kids, providing him a reason to live. He said a feeling of balance in the middle of the often huge demands of being a star. In 2009, Barry and Linda got closer to each other. Linked to the United States by legally become citizens of the US while also preserving their UK citizenship. This dual citizenship didn't mean just Barry's devotion for his British roots, but also his long-term dedication to the land where a lot of his life as an adult and his achievement in business had happened. At this moment, Barry having largely lived in the US since 1974, but he still had a place to live. In the UK as a way to stay connected to his heritage. Barry Gibb's personal life also crossed paths with Michael, another famous musician, Jackson. In a 2014 interview with The Gibb thought back on the Mirror with fondness connection he had with the King of. He told us that Jackson would regularly stayed at the Gibb house in Miami, where he liked the coziness of Barry's family life is better than the pandemonium of living in a hotel. Gibb made an image of Jackson's strange and infantile side, watching fans from the kitchen on TV outside his hotel, laughing in his well-known high-pitched, "Haha," he said, remembering Jackson resided upstairs for a while, too, before the child was very well known trial for molestation. Gibb was evident in saying that they never talked about the court case. Instead, their friendship was built on working together creatively and friendship. They would write songs together, share wine, and even drink together. Jackson would get enough of it sometimes that fall asleep on the floor. Gibb says he really misses Jackson, showing how much he misses it. Not just because I like Jackson's paintings, but as a buddy who knew him better on a personal level. Real estate also had a part to play, a fascinating part of Gibb's life. He bought one of the in January 2006, the most important properties in history. The first one in American music history, the house where Johnny Cash and June Carter Cash lived in Hendersonville, TN. Gibb didn't just want to own the house and fix it up again, turn it into a place to write songs. A place where heritage and innovation could come together. The house, on the other hand, met a sod finish. While the work was being done nearly April 2007, the property was completely destroyed in fire and totally ruined, taking away a part of cultural past. Gibb, nevertheless, was able to go on after the said loss, built a new house on the land, honoring the land and the spirit of music that had once resided there. In the end, he made the decision to sell the estate in 2014, putting an end to a business that had brought both hopes and disappointments. Barry Gibb finally opened up at age 78, knowing the truth regarding his youngest brother Andy Gibb, in a way he hadn't done before. For years, Barry, who had been botholder brother and teacher, had painstakingly looked up his own sadness to himself and chose instead to honor Andy's exceptional skills and charm whenever the topic came up. Now at an age when honesty and reflection become more essential than keeping up, Barry, well-built public waltz let himself talk to rare being open. He admitted thought a delicate blend of pride, happiness, sadness, and grief that had always set the tone for his friendship with Andy. Andy Gibb was more than simply the little brother of the Bee Gees. To Barry, he was a boy full of light and possibility, a naturalia talented singer whose appeal seemed without any effort. From the first time Andy Barry noticed hints of what Barry would do when he started performing, brilliance that was as good as what he and Hiswat, the brothers, had done together. When Andy put out songs like I Just Want to Be Your Everything and Shadow Dancing, Barry was more than only his co-writer, and he was the largest supporter of the production, putting his own creative force into making sure Andy does well. Back then, Andy was often called the Gibb by Barry, has the most natural pop voice, born star who could have taken over the world stage for decades. But Andy had a young smile, and was loved by Barry, spotted a weakness in millions of admirers that not many people saw. The truth is that Barry told Andy's at 78 that come too quickly and too young, and without the emotional armor to take care of it. Barry said he had been worried all the time about his brother's weakness, his need for love, his wanting to be accepted, and the way the fame's pressures made those insecurities worse. Andy, he said, was tossed into the before he had time to get ready for the spotlight really become himself, and that left them open to the harmful fame brought with it temptations. Barry didn't avoid the difficult part of the story, the story's main point. Andy has a hard time with addiction. For years, Barry had been careful about what he said. Never wanting to lower his brother's story as a warning, but Barry thought about it later and said how terrible it was to watch Andy fight his demons. Had talked about how powerless it is to know that no amount of love and support couldn't fully accept the help his family offered, get away from drugs and the emotional stress that came with them. Barry's truth wasn't one of judgment, but of deep, lasting anguish. Hesiod that he had repeatedly asked himself if there was more he could have done, if a new kind of help or more difficult love could have saved Andy's life. When Andy died in 1988, while he was only 30, Barry was heartbroken at the age of 30. Losing his infant brother was a wound that would never heal, really healed. He admitted at 78 that even after all the successes of the Bee Gees, the prizes, the fame, and the heritage that lasted for generations, the somber shadow of Andy's absence above everything. Every time Barry played heard his voice or one of Andy's songs, it sounded like time folded on a tape and on itself, bringing back memories of what lost much too soon. But Barry also shared the truth about the love that lasted after death. He talked about Andy and how lived on in music, remembrance, and in the strong link of brotherhood. He took Andy with him in every song he wrote. He wrote every note he sang and every stage he went on. The reality is, Barry claimed that Andy was never Marilyth's younger brother who didn't get a little time. He had a big role in story of the Gibb family. Someone who presents changed the very fabric of their lives. Barry Gibb, the famous singer, is 78 years old. Finally, the Bee Gees lead singer spoke up in an honest and emotional interview about his younger brother, Andy Gibb, who is now 21, feelings and facts that he had been carrying for decades in secret. Thinking about his, Barry said about his brother's life, Andy Wash was a brilliant star, yet he had problems, something folks didn't really get. He was full with ability in life, yet fame can be hard to handle at times, and the way people lived around him was too much to handle. Andy died tragically, and losing him Washad left a permanent mark on Barry's life at the age of 30. Something Barry stated would leave an imprint on his life he only fully understood after some time had passed off time. Barry told the story of the day 5 days after Andy died. His 30th birthday, big deal because held have been a time off celebration, but instead, it turned into a time off sadness. He remembered with remorse, "We had a fight not long before his birthday, and I never thought that will be the last time I saw him living. I carry that with me every day." Barry's thoughts extended beyond the sad last moments. He talked about Andy's charm, his musical genius, and the manner he got people's attention with his deep voice and innate charm. Andy had something special. said. Something that could touch hearts easily. People liked him not just for his music, but for who he was. His generosity, his sense of humor, and warmth. But fame may be a double-edged sword, and it's something I wish I could do, have kept him safe from more. The exchange also made it clear Barry's enduring sense of duty with emotions of shame as an elder brother. He said it was both hefty and inspiring. I always tried to help him, to support him, but love can occasionally isn't enough when someone is battling said. Their own battles. Barry Gibb's interview was full with words, had both sadness and respect. He talked about his own memories of Andy, occasions that showed off his brother's love of music, and his joyful nature, and the strong closeness they had as a family. We were initially brothers and then musicians. Second, Barry stressed that the music was our language, but it was our family that made us who we are. Losing Andy at such a young age was like losing a part of myself, and it's a thing that never really goes away. Infinitely saying these things out loud, Barry not only remembered Andy, but also gave a moving look into the personal lives of the Gibb family, a tale of love, remorse, and lasting love brotherhood. His thoughts are a reminder of both the splendor and how fragile life is, and how even in the midst of fame and prosperity, family and tea stay the most important anchors of all. Barry Gibb's statements were not just at 78 an insight into Andy, but also a testament to the long-lasting complexity of family love. Without conditions, happy, occasionally a slide, but always lasting. For Barry, telling the truth about Andy wasn't simply about breaking the record straight. It was finally time to speak out about the love, the heartache, and their recollections that had been inside him for a long time, him for almost 40 years.